Can love triumph over duty and tradition? The grand hall shimmered with opulence-eared velvet drapes cascaded from soaring ceilings. Gilded candelabras cast pools of warm golden light that danced across marble floors. Yet, despite the lavish splendor, Prince Alexander's figure stood bowed beneath a weight far heavier than his finely embroidered tunic. The murmurs had already begun to ripple through the gathered nobles, whispers sharper than any dagger's edge. His sapphire eyes, usually vibrant with hope, flickered with a flicker of unease as the murmur deepened into stifled laughter, slicing through the warm air like a sudden cold snap. The Duke of Norland, resplendent in a cloak brocaded with threads of gold, rose from his carved ebony throne with deliberate grace, his gaze fixed upon Alexander like a hawk eyeing its prey. "It seems we find our prince more enamored with idleness than duty." The Duke's voice was smooth, silken venom veiled as civility. A ripple of chuckles rolled through the assembly, punctuated with knowing looks and suppressed giggles. "Our kingdom's future fluctuates in the shadow of his absence from affairs. What say you, my lords? Shall we trust a crown to hands so reluctant?" A sudden gasp bubbled from a nearby noblewoman, mingling with the furtive humming of discontent. Alexander's jaw clenched as the weight of ancient expectations pressed down. The golden crown perched on a distant cushion, a symbol of duty he longed to embrace yet feared would shackle his heart. His fingers curled tightly around the embroidered fabric of his sleeve, a subtle tremor betraying the storm within. Before he could speak, Alara's gaze met his across the room, a silent beacon swathed in vibrant crimson. Her eyes radiated both sorrow and incredulous hope, a fragile flame daring to stay lit amidst the gathering storm. Yet even her presence could not stem the tide of judgment sweeping through the assembly. "Answer us, Alexander," the Duke pressed forward, voice now a sharpened command. "Will you honor your birthright or persist in this dalliance with dreams unbefitting a prince?" The hall fell into a heavy silence, the kind that stretched between heartbeats and suffocated breaths. Alexander's voice, when it came, was low, tender, yet edged with undercurrents of defiance. "My place is not yet set in stone." Some lords exchanged skeptical glances. Whispers fluttered like restless wings. The Duke leaned forward, his smug smile widening. "Then let us hope the stones of tradition do not crumble beneath the weight of whimsy." The banquet's color seemed to drain away, replaced by shadows that crept in from vaulted corners. The sumptuous feast proceeded, but Alexander's world contracted. Voices dimmed to distant echoes. The gilded walls morphed into barriers, and the laughter abruptly felt hollow, a cruel mask. Retreating from the glow of the grand hall, Alexander stepped into the velvet dusk of the palace gardens, where rose bushes bloomed in secret corners, their petals deep red, both beauty and blood. He traced a finger along a single fading rose, its edges curled like the fragile hope within his chest. Behind him, the soft rustle of evening wind whispered a promise yet to be fulfilled. The golden hues of twilight brushed against his face, catching the tear that silently traced down his cheek, unbidden yet unrestrained. Prince Alexander stood alone beneath the vast sky, the weight of a kingdom's expectations pressing down. But beneath the surface, a spark of rebellion, of love and identity fiercely guarded, began to stir. Night draped its sable cloak over the palace, swallowing sound and light in equal measure. Within the gilded confines of his chambers, Prince Alexander stood by the vast bay window, where moonlight pooled like silver flame across the polished floor. The grandeur surrounding him felt suffocating, walls lined with ancestral portraits whose eyes seemed to pierce through his fragile veil of dignity. His breath came slow and deliberate, the chill of evening settling beneath his skin like whispered recriminations. The faint scent of rose lingered, a haunting echo from the gardens below where secrets blossomed under the cloak of darkness. Alexander's hand trembled slightly as he brushed the cool glass, condensing a mist as fragile as his resolve. The banquet's venomous echoes haunted him, not just the Duke's scorn, but the smothering chorus of the court's collective gaze. His very name had been spun into a web of doubt and derision. Was he the architect of his own downfall? Did the weight of the crown render his every action a measured step beneath relentless scrutiny? A fractured silence filled the room, punctuated only by the distant toll of a solemn bell marking the passing hours. Alexander's mind raced through memories, the fleeting warmth of Alara's gaze across the hall, her whispered encouragement, the pang of her vulnerability caught in the tempest of courtly conflict. He sank heavily into an ornate velvet armchair, its fabric cool upon his skin, a stark contrast to the firestorm within. The golden crown embroidered on the cushion beside him gleamed mockingly in the candlelight, the eternal symbol of duty and sacrifice. Yet now it felt less like a crown meant for him and more like a gilded cage, its weight binding his spirit. He clasped his hands tightly, knuckles whitening, wrestling with the tumultuous whirlwind of shame and defiance. Questions clawed relentlessly at the edges of his heart. Could he ever balance the heavy mantle of royalty with the yearning for a life defined by love, not legacy? Was his identity destined to be swallowed by tradition's unforgiving abyss? From the secluded shadows of the room, a subtle sound shifted, the crackle of parchment, barely audible. Alexander's gaze snapped to the ornate desk where a letter lay, its wax seal broken yet containing words unseen. It was a summons not of command or condemnation, but of possibility. His fingers hesitated, trembling as they unwound the delicate script, the ink shimmering faintly beneath the candle's tremulous glow. The letter spoke of a freedom beyond the palace walls, of love undisguised by masquerades, and whispers of a world waiting to embrace a bard unbound. For a fleeting moment, the fortress of desolation fractured, replaced by a fragile glimmer, fragile beacon amid the thickening gloom. Alexander's chest rose as if taking in a breath long held. The prince, who had once felt shackled by duty, now sensed the stirrings of defiance, seated by hope embroidered in stolen words. Yet the path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty, the distance between whom he was and whom he wished to become, stretching vast and unyielding. The flame of potential flickered fiercely against the encroaching shadows of expectation. As the candle guttered, casting long, wavering silhouettes against the chamber's ornate walls, Alexander rose, emboldened by the whisper of a world just beyond the gilded cage. His eyes, once clouded by doubt, glinted now with a rekindled fire, a herald of a journey beginning beneath the watchful stars. Outside, the night breeze stirred the rose garden's petals into a dance, their subtle fragrance weaving through the open window and threading its way through the heart of a prince torn between crown and love. Here, in this suspended moment between loss and longing, Alexander stood on the cusp, each breath a vow, each heartbeat a promise yet to be written. The heavy wooden doors of the chamber closed with a soft, resolute thud behind Prince Alexander, cutting him off from the echoing grandeur of the palace. In the flicker of candlelight, his regal attire had given way to a simple linen shirt, its fabric soft and unassuming against the chill of the night. Nearby, the gleaming golden crown rested on its velvet cushion, the heavy symbol of obligation and power seeming now like cold iron chains rather than a blessing. The faint aroma of wilted roses pervaded the air, lingering whisper from the palace gardens, where secrets bloomed under the watchful moon. Alexander's eyes fell upon the broken pocket watch, left abandoned on the windowsill. Its cracked face, forever halted at a forgotten hour, mirrored his heart. Fractured moments of opportunity, lost to duty and expectation. His fingers brushed the shattered glass, tracing the jagged lines as memories stirred within. A hesitant knock pierced the silence, delicate yet deliberate. The door creaked open to reveal a young maid, her eyes flickering with an unreadable mix of fear and compassion. In her hands she held a letter, sealed with wax bearing a crest unfamiliar yet alluring. With trembling hands, Alexander broke the seal, unfolding a parchment inscribed with elegant calligraphy. The words spoke not of diplomacy or decree, but of forbidden vows, a secret fraternity of hearts yearning for freedom beyond the gilded cage. The script seemed to breathe life into the dim room, weaving promises of love untethered from tradition's relentless grasp. Alexander's lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile, a fragile flame sparking amidst the shadows of doubt. He rose, the room seeming to lean in with anticipation as he lifted his gaze to the window. Outside, the royal rose garden sprawled in labyrinthine tendrils beneath the moon's silvery gaze. The blooms cast shifting shadow symbols of passion guarded and secrets whispered on the breeze. The fading petals of a single scarlet rose drifted softly to the earth, a poignant reminder of love fleeting yet defiant. Tucking the letter close to his heart beneath his tunic, Alexander stepped away from the chamber's confines. The cool night air kissed his cheeks with gentle urgency, rousing the dormant courage within. Each footstep toward the rose garden was a step away from expectation and towards a truth long denied. In this suspended moment, where duty and desire collided, the broken watch and the falling rose told a silent story of time reclaimed and love reclaimed. The prince, once bound by tradition's icy grip, now stirred with a resolute transformation, ready to chart a path through the shadows into a future where love might triumph over legacy. Under the watchful stars, Alexander's journey began anew, a delicate dance between power and passion, his heart beating to the rhythm of a world he yearned to claim on his own terms. Under the shelter of a silvered sky, where the moon hung like a silent guardian over cobblestone streets slick with recent rain, Prince Alexander moved with cautious purpose. The opulence of the palace had been left behind, replaced by the muted shadows of the city beyond the royal walls, where life pulsed raw and unvarnished. His cloak, dark as the night itself, concealed every trace of princely splendor. The golden crest, the embroidered sigils of house and heritage known of it, had a place here. In its stead, only the burning desire for meaning beyond the gilded cage tethered him to this world. He reached a narrow alley where a lone figure awaited Alara. Her eyes, bright and defiant against the muted glow of a lantern, met his with a mixture of hope and quiet rebellion. She was clothed plainly, but there was an undeniable grace in her stance, a fire that rivaled the stars themselves. "You came," she whispered, breath mingling with the mist. Alexander's reply was a murmur threaded with resolve. "I couldn't stay hidden within walls that suffocate me." Their hands met briefly, an electric tether, grounding and urgent. Together, they slipped through the labyrinth of shadows and whispered dreams, a secret shared between two souls bound by mutual disdain for the chains of tradition. In the candlelit confines of a modest room, away from prying eyes and gilded judgment, Alexander and Alara plotted. Their voices, hushed but fierce, wove strategies not of swords, but of truth yet spoken. They recognized their fledgling alliance was fragile, threatened by the twisting intrigues stitched through the royal court. "We must tread carefully," Alara cautioned, her gaze sharp as a blade's edge. "The Duke's eyes are claws, and his web spreads with every whispered doubt." Alexander's jaw tightened, the fire of determination kindling in his cobalt gaze. "Then we shall shine a light too blinding for his shadows to endure." But even as plans were laid, the world outside churned with rising tempests. Rumors churned beneath whispers, secrets mutated into weapons. Alexander's heart pulsed with a relentless urgency. The tender love nurtured in these stolen moments was a fragile bloom, susceptible to the frost of exposure. Days blurred into nights as Alexander balanced courtly appearances with clandestine encounters. The golden crown weighed heavier with each passing hour, its promise of power tangled in duties he increasingly sought to reject. In one fleeting moment of false security, under the guise of a routine council meeting, Alexander's carefully guarded secret flickered too close to revelation. The sharp eyes of Duke Norlin, gleaming with malice, caught a glimpse, a stolen whisper, a lingering glance, the fatal misstep that would ripple through the tapestry of his carefully spun life. As the Duke's lips curled into a sinister smile beneath the vaulted ceiling of the council chamber, Alexander's heart sank, a silent herald of the storm gathering beyond the palace gates. The air tightened, each breath a struggle against the tempest of fate poised to strike. And in that charged stillness, Alexander stood alone, the fragile bloom of rebellion trembling in the shadow of the coming night. The courtyard was cloaked in a suffocating silence, heavy with the weight of watchful eyes and whispered accusations. Prince Alexander moved carefully between the towering columns, his every step measured but laced with an underlying tension that tightened around his chest like a vice. The palace, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a labyrinth of shadows, its golden halls masking unseen dangers. As dusk bled into night, Alexander's cloak rustled softly against the marble, the subtle sound lost amid the distant clatter of servants and the low murmur of nobles retreating behind closed doors. His thoughts were fractured, restless, a storm waging in the depths of his soul. The delicate balance between his clandestine meetings with Alara and the rigorous demands of court life began to crumble under the mounting pressure. His heart raced as he recalled the council meeting earlier that day. He had attempted to maintain the mask of princely composure while covertly slipping a note to a messenger, one carrying whispers of alliance and rebellion. But fate betrayed him. From the shadowed gallery above, the sharp gaze of Duke Norland caught the subtle exchange. A cruel smile tugged at the Duke's lips, consuming the moment like poison. Alexander clenched his fists beneath his cloak, recalling the sickening realization of being watched, trapped in a web spun with malice and guile. He was no longer merely the reluctant prince. He had become the hunted. In the sanctuary of his chambers, the letter awaited him, a relic of hope glowing faintly under the flickering candlelight. Yet, even its comforting presence could not shield him from the creeping dread that each secret meeting with Alara unraveled the fragile threads of his public life. Night after night, their rendezvous grew riskier, shadows lengthening between them like the growing divide afflicting Alexander's heart. The rose garden that once whispered promises of love now felt like a stage for impending betrayal. Each stolen kiss beneath its boughs was a fragile bloom edging toward frost. "We tread dangerous ground," Alara murmured during one such meeting, her fingers intertwining with his, trembling yet resolute. "The world we fight for demands sacrifice." Alexander's eyes, pools of conflicted desire and determination, met hers. "And yet I cannot see a life without you by my side." Their alliance was both sanctuary and battlefield, each moment charged with the knowledge that discovery would mean ruin. The Duke's shadow loomed larger, with every secret whispered in hidden alcoves, his poison spreading through the veins of the court like wildfire. The tension climaxed in the oppressive air of the royal council chamber, where Alexander faced veiled threats cloaked as counsel. Duke Norland's words dripped with venom disguised as concern, and the courtier's eyes flickered with uncertainty, swayed by the seeds of doubt he had sown. Amid this storm, a misstep, a brief faltering in a guarded glance, or a trembling hand was enough. Eyes glimmered with the promise of betrayal. The unseen chains tightened, suspicion crystallized into accusation. Laden, alone in the vastness of the moonlit gardens, Alexander gripped the broken pocket watch nestled in his palm, a poignant reminder of time stolen and opportunities slipping like sand through clenched fists. The fractured glass reflected the fractured path ahead. As the night deepened, a sudden rustle in the shadows drew his gaze to a figure standing deliberate and still. Alara emerged from the darkness, her expression grave but fierce. "They know," she whispered, barely audible over the wind's mournful chant. "The Duke has moved swiftly. Your secrets will be exposed unless we act now." Alexander's breath caught, the fragile hope that had kindled within him flickering perilously. In that suspended moment, beneath a sky heavy with stars and unease, the prince faced the bitter truth. Love's rebellion had ignited a firestorm, and the coming days would demand a courage that might consume them both. A heavy mist cloaked the castle grounds as dawn barely whispered its arrival across the horizon, the muted light filtering through the gray veil like a tentative promise. Prince Alexander stood beneath the sprawling canopy of the ancient rose garden, a place once vibrant with secret rendezvous and tender murmurs, now shadowed with uncertainty and impending revelation. The delicate fragrance of crushed petals hung in the damp air, a scent that had once symbolized hidden love and whispered hope. But beneath his fingers, a crimson rose lay wilting, its edges curling like fragile memories slipping beyond reach. The golden crown rested quietly beside him on a stone bench, polished yet cold, a stark reminder of the duty he bore, heavy and unyielding. A sudden footfall disturbed the silence. Alara emerged from the swirling fog, her figure both regal and vulnerable, draped in a cloak that concealed as much as it revealed. Her eyes, usually fierce with defiance, shimmered now with a sorrow so profound it seemed to mute the garden's very breath. "Alexander," she began, her voice a trembling thread woven with pain and resolve, "there is something you must know." He turned to her, heart tightening as the unspoken tension rippled between them like a fragile filament stretched to breaking. "What is it?" he asked, though dread already coiled within his chest. Alara's gaze fell to the crumbling petals at her feet, then lifted with agonizing clarity. I am not the commoner you believe. I carry a bloodline as heavy as your own lineage tied to the neighboring throne. The weight of her words settled upon the cool morning air like a sudden frost. Alexander's breath caught, the rose between them seeming to wither further in that moment of revelation. In that garden where love once blossomed in secrecy, now bloomed the harsh truth of forbidden ties and tangled allegiances. Why hide this? Alexander's voice was soft, laced with betrayal and disbelief. Why risk everything if there was a kingdom at stake? Alara's eyes reflected the storm within. It was to protect you, to protect us both. But now it threatens to tear apart the fragile threads of hope we've woven. Around them, the garden seemed to hold its breath, the very stones echoing with the clash of duty and desire. The golden crown gleamed faintly in the growing light, no longer a mere symbol of authority, but a signpost towards an impossible choice. Alexander's fingers gripped the broken pocket watch in his palm, the fractured glass mirroring his splintered world moments of happiness, shattered by secrets and the relentless march of consequence. A deep ache settled in his bones, the cost of love entwined irrevocably with tragedy. What becomes of us now, he murmured, voice barely above a whisper. Alara stepped closer, her hand reaching for his, an anchor in the swirling tempest. We must face what lies ahead together, but the path will not be ours alone to walk. The first rays of sunlight pierced through the mist, illuminating the ruined rose, the crown, and the watch symbols of a fractured past and an uncertain future. In their flickering shadows, Alexander understood the magnitude of the deception, the stakes of their rebellion. Suddenly, from the twisting hedges bordering the garden, a figure emerged, Duke Norland, his face etched with cruel satisfaction. "Surprised, Your Highness." His voice cut through the quiet like a blade, eyes glinting with the triumph of revelation. Alexander's heart thundered, every fragile hope shattering, with the Duke's mocking smile. "You will pay for this treachery," he vowed, fury igniting his blue eyes. But Cedric's smile only deepened. "The court has already begun to question your place here. Your lover's secret makes you both vulnerable. The crown demands steadfast loyalty, not fragile dreams." The clash was no longer just of hearts, but of kingdoms, of legacies. The rose, once a sanctuary of love, now lay broken beneath their feet. As the dawn bloomed fully overhead, Alexander and Alara stood united but poised on the edge of exile, their future suspended between love's defiant spark and the relentless tide of duty and deceit. The journey toward redemption and revolt had only just begun. The heavy oak doors of the throne room shut with a final echoing boom sound that seemed to sever Prince Alexander from all that had once defined him. Beyond the cold stone walls, the murmur of courtly voices dissolved into stifled whispers and guarded glances. Inside, the air was thick with a tangible heaviness, as if the very atmosphere absorbed the betrayal that hung like a suffocating shroud. Alexander stood alone beneath the vaulted ceiling, its dark timbers sprawling like the ribs of a great beast. His gaze was hollow, fixed downward where the once polished marble floor, now dulled by shadow, mirrored a fractured reflection of his soul. The golden crown glittering moments before as a symbol of sovereignty had been wrenched from his fingers, now resting cold and distant on the raised dais. A slow drizzle began outside, tapping against stained glass windows, each drop a metronome counting time lost. The gleaming jewels and tapestries that adorned the hall seemed muted, draped in hues of deep crimson and ancient gold that bled into bruised shadows. Even the scent of faint jasmine, once perfuming the chambers with delicate promise, was replaced by the stale odor of despair. The Duke of Norland's triumphant smirk lingered still in Alexander's mind, malicious imprint carved into the fabric of his downfall. The political machinations had culminated in exile. The king's decree stripped Alexander of title, power, and most heartbreakingly, the love of Alara. Rumors swirled rapidly, whispers sculpted to weaponize hope and fracture trust. Alara, compelled by duty or deception, was now promised to another, a cruel stone cast into the well of Alexander's grief. In the solitude of his chambers, the prince sank onto a crimson velvet chaise, fingers curling around a shattered pocket watch left forgotten on a nearby table. Its cracked glass glimmered dully, ensnaring fragments of light like shards of a broken past. Each tickless moment was a freeze frame where time itself seemed to mock him immobile, irreversible. His breath came ragged, a series of shallow waves cracking against an invisible wall. Images cascaded in his mind. Ilara's tender smile, the passion sung in stolen moments beneath the rose garden, the looming silences pregnant with sacrifice. All now fragmented, a delicate bloom crushed beneath political ambition and cold tradition. Outside, the storm rose, a tempest, unrelenting and fierce, lashing at the ancient walls. Lightning fractured the darkness with violent clarity, thunder shaking the foundations in resonance with the turmoil roiling within him. The once vibrant world of promise and love had diminished to a void filled with whispers of loss. Alexander closed his eyes, the room narrowing to the sound of rain, and his own heartbeat, a slow dirge marking the descent into night. His hands, once steady and sure as they held the sword of justice, now trembled, fingers tracing invisible scars over boundless pain. He was a prince stripped bare, not by foreign armies, nor by fate's cruel hand, but by the betrayal woven deep within his kingdom, the betrayal of those who upheld tradition while extinguishing the flickers of his heart. The gilded cage that once promised power now stood as a prison forged of isolation and sorrow. No whispers of triumph stirred here, only a hollow echo where love once thrived, now replaced by the cold certainty of exile. Alexander's spirit felt fragmented, shattered like the symbols that surrounded him, rose petals scattered, the broken watch, a crown too heavy to bear. The storm's fury crescendoed, a violent symphony of loss and regret outside as inside. The prince retreated into the darkest recesses of his soul and abyss, where hope flickered faintly, a fragile pulse amid overwhelming despair. Against the swollen tide of betrayal, Alexander's solitary figure remained silhouetted, framed by the silvered panes. His breath misted in the chilling air, a fragile thread between what once was and a future unmade. The moment stretched, suspended between collapse and the faintest glimmer of something yet undetermined. The cold settled deep into the bones of the fortress where Prince Alexander was confined, an exile cast from golden halls into stone shadows. The light was scarce, squeezing through narrow slits high above, carving ribbons of pale silver against time-worn bricks. An echo of soft dripping water punctuated the deepest silence, slow, relentless, like a heartbeat fading into oblivion. Alexander sat on the cold floor, draped in a threadbare cloak that could neither warm nor comfort. His once pristine attire, now a muted shade of ash, hung loosely on his tall frame, as if the weight of title and purpose had evaporated along with his name. His striking blue eyes, once fierce and commanding, stared vacantly into the damp air, beholding nothing, yet absorbing the vast emptiness that encased him. The chamber was cramped, its stone walls suffocating in their cold embrace. The faint scent of mold and neglect curled through the stale air, weaving with the chill to cloak him in a tangible loneliness. Every sound, his labored breath, the scrape of his clothing, resounded with harsh clarity, each vibration a somber reminder of isolation. On the small, crude wooden table beside him lay a broken pocket watch, its glass face shattered in a spiderweb of cracks. The hands were frozen. Time itself seemed resigned to this imprisonment. Alexander reached out with trembling fingers to touch the fractured surface, the shards prickling his skin like the jagged edges of his fractured soul. He closed his eyes, a single tear tracing a cold trail down his cheek as memories surged unbidden. The rose garden where Ilara's smile had once ignited his hope now bled silence. A fading bloom threatened to be swallowed whole by frost. The golden crown that had once promised glory now felt like an unbearable shackle, its gleam smothered by shadows. Voices from the distant past drifted to him as faint, ghostly murmurs. Laughter, whispers of love, the sweet cadence of shared secrets beneath moonlit sky. Those echoes too had grown thin, frayed by betrayal and time, slipping through his grasp like sand. A hollow sigh escaped his lips, swallowed instantly by the oppressive stillness. His throat tightened, words lodged between hope and despair. Is this the end? The question hung in the air, unanswered, a fragile thread dangling into the abyss. His body sagged into the cold stone floor, as if the very marrow sought to dissolve with the crumbling foundation beneath him. His hands, once steady and strong, lay open and loose, palms up like a plea to a god who had turned away. Outside, a sudden gust rattled the iron bars with desperate urgency, a fleeting reminder of the world beyond, but also a harsh barrier, impenetrable, unyielding. The raindrops began to fall, pattering softly on the cold stones, each drop a whispered lament for lost dreams. In that shadowed cell, time ceased to flow. Alexander became a statue carved from grief, his breath shallow, heart heavy. The broken pocket watch lay silent, a mirror to all that was fractured within. His eyelids fluttered shut, and in the vast blackness behind his lids, the world contracted to a void where love and honor, once the fire that propelled him forward, moldered, stifled beneath the weight of exile. The stillness deepened, engulfing him whole. No light, no warmth, only endless, unbroken silence, a final refuge, or a deathly quiet before the storm of fate yet to break. Silence wrapped around Prince Alexander like a shroud, heavy and absolute, as he sat alone within the cold stone chamber that had become his world. The shadows clung to the corners with a suffocating intimacy, swallowing the few flickers of candlelight that dared to fight the darkness. His figure, once regal and commanding, seemed diminished, an echo of the man who had hoped to chart his destiny by the compass of love and honor. The broken pocket watch lay on the floor beside him, its shards gleaming faintly under the tenuous glow. The fractured glass was a mirror to his fractured soul, time halted, moments lost beyond reclamation. Yet the broken watch held a whispered promise, a reminder of the irretrievable past, but also the shifting possibility of moments yet to come. Alexander's breath was shallow, caught between despair and defiance. The weight of exile pierced him more acutely than the cold stone beneath his knees. Memories surged unbidden, the warm touch of Alara's hand, the secret smiles in the rose garden under veiled starlight, the rebellious spark of hope that had once set his heart ablaze. A faint sound brushed against the silence, a rustling at the threshold. Startled, Alexander looked up, focusing through the haze of his weariness. A folded piece of parchment lay there, slipped under the heavy door by unseen hands in the depths of night. His fingers, trembling with a mixture of desperation and fragile resolve, unfolded the letter. The ink bloomed like a secret embrace. Alexander, though chains bind us in body, they cannot imprison our spirits. Love is neither crown nor kingdom. It is the breath that stirs the soul even in the darkest night. Look beyond the walls. Remember the garden where our hearts first met. The rose still blooms, unyielding to frost. Alara. The words kindled a faint flame within his chest, gentle yet unmistakable. Alexander closed his eyes, breathing in the possibility nestled in that message, a beacon blazing amid the desolation. A tear slipping free, trailing down the contours of his face, glistening like a draught of rain that heralds the coming dawn. Rising slowly, his gaze swept to the tiny window, a sliver of the sky above, fading from charcoal to the faintest hue of blue. The golden crown, once emblematic of irrevocable loss, lay in the corner. Yet now it seemed less a symbol of bondage and more a challenge poised to be reclaimed or redefined. Alexander's hand reached out, brushing the cracked face of the watch once more, feeling the fractures beneath his fingertips. The shattered timepiece was not just a remnant of defeat, but a testament to endurance. The promise that even broken things could be mended, pieced together anew. In that measured silence, the chamber softened, suffused with the fragile light of hope. A decision quietly stirred a whisper, that resilience was not the absence of anguish, but the courage to begin again. He folded the letter tenderly, securing it close to his heart. The storm of loss still raged outside, relentless and unforgiving. But within Alexander, a new rhythm began, a pulse steadying amid the tempest. The journey was far from over. The shadows had not claimed him entirely. Beneath the ruins of despair flickered the seeds of a rebellion born from love's quiet strength. As the first rays of dawn kissed the horizon, Prince Alexander stood, poised between what was lost and what could still be won, ready to step into the uncertain light of a new day. The first rays of dawn seeped gently into the dim chamber where Prince Alexander had confined himself, casting a soft amber glow that embraced the cold stone and breathed warmth into the still air. The once suffocating shadows retreated slowly, exchanging their grip for a tender caress that stirred the heavy silence. Alexander sat by the small window, tracing the delicate patterns etched by morning dew on the glass. His hands, steadier now, lingered over the broken pocket watch, its shattered face catching and fracturing the golden light like a fragmented mirror of a fractured past. The watch no longer felt like a relic of despair, but rather a testament to endurance, each crack a story of survival. Outside, the royal rose garden stirred awake beneath the sun's embrace. Petals, resplendent in hues of crimson and gold, shimmered with life, their delicate dance in the cool breeze echoing a bloom in his own spirit. The fading rose, once a symbol of love's cautious secrecy, now seemed to pulse with a quiet resilience amidst the morning mist. Slow footsteps approached, familiar presence. Alara, her silhouette framed by the awakening garden, radiated a serene strength. Her eyes met Alexander's with a warm understanding, unspoken yet profound. She carried no grand proclamations, only a quiet promise nestled within that gaze. "The morning breaks, Alexander," she said softly, voice like the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by the breeze. "Though the night was long and merciless, there is life renewed in these first moments." He returned her gaze, the flicker of hope in his cobalt eyes growing bolder. "I feared this darkness endless, but perhaps light still finds its way." Their hands met, fingers intertwining as naturally as the intertwining vines that crept along the garden walls. Their touch was tentative at first, then resolute, a fragile thread binding two hearts seeking reclamation. The golden crown, once a distant and cold emblem, rested now on a nearby table, catching the sunlight and scattering fragments of gleaming warmth. Alexander looked upon it not as a burden, but as a symbol waiting to be reshaped. It was no longer a chain, but a challenge, a call to redefine what it meant to rule. "We begin anew," Alexander murmured with quiet conviction, "not for tradition's sake alone, but for a kingdom where love and duty entwine." Alara smiled, a tender curve that lit the room brighter than any candle. "And we walk this path together, unafraid of shadows that once bound us." In that moment, the room seemed to breathe alongside them, a heartbeat syncing with theirs, a pulse of renewal threading through the stone and sky. The fortress which had encased Alexander in despair now stood as a chrysalis, fragile yet potent with the promise of transformation. As the sun climbed higher, casting warm ribbons through stained glass, Alexander rose. His shoulders squared under the weight of new purpose, and his stance, though still tempered with uncertainty, radiated the first glimmers of unyielding strength. The shattered watch ticked faintly in the quiet, an echo of persistence beneath cracks of hardship. It was a reminder, broken things could be pieced together again, sometimes even more beautifully than before. Stepping toward the door that led beyond the garden and into the realm of courtly intrigue and unspoken wars, Alexander's breath deepened. Though the path was rugged and the future veiled, the silence that had once claimed him was now pierced by the subtle strains of resurgence. Change had begun not as a sudden blaze, but a slow kindling, a delicate unfurling of hope intertwined with resolve. The prince, once lost in shadows, now glimpsed the fragile dawn of his regained strength, ready to face the storm with a heart rekindled by love and tempered by trial. At the threshold of the rose garden, where petals glistened like whispered secrets, Alexander paused. The sunlight warmed his face and ignited his spirit, a silent vow rising within him to transform despair into defiance, loss into legacy. The journey ahead shimmered with unknowns, but for the first time in long hours, he stepped forward not as a captive of fate, but as a king reclaiming his story, steadied by light, bound by love, driven by a courage reborn. The great hall shimmered once more, though the illusion of grandeur failed to mask the tension thickening the air like dense tapestry threads woven with whispered conspiracies. Golden chandeliers spilled molten light onto the polished marble floor, reflecting glimmers of courage in the blue depths of Prince Alexander's eyes. His figure stood poised beneath towering arches, the regal restraint of his attire belying the electric purpose igniting within. Around him, noble faces, some skeptical, others swollen with intrigue, turned as one as the doors closed with slow, solemn grace. At the far side of the hall, the Duke of Norland's smug expression coiled like a serpent ready to strike. Yet even his cold gaze faltered beneath the prince's newfound resolve. A hush had fallen, the only sounds the faint rustle of silk and the steady, measured breath of a man reclaiming his destiny. I stand before you, not as the exiled prince of whispers and doubt. Alexander's voice rang clear, resonant against the soaring stone, but as a man who chooses love in truth over fear and deceit. Murmurs swelled uneasily, some hands clenched in silent defiance, others trembled with suppressed allegiance. Alexander's gaze sought the familiar warmth of Alara's eyes, now openly shining with loyalty and shared strength. I declare now my intention to marry Alara not as a concession to tradition, but as a testament to a future where love is not a scandal to hide, but a beacon that guides this kingdom. The Duke's lip curled in contempt, venom restrained beneath the guise of courtly decorum. A reckless proclamation, one that mocks the very foundations of our rule. What madness encourages a prince to defy the crown's will for a commoner's whim? Alexander's posture shifted imperceptibly, catching the light to reveal the subtle glint of the broken pocket watch pinned over his heart, a quiet emblem of fractured time now mended by conviction. The crown is not merely gold nor decree, it is the hope of our people in the courage to change, Alexander replied, each word tempered with steel and fire. Alara is no commoner. She is my partner, my equal, and the promise of unity between two worlds long divided by fear. Gasps rippled through the assembly, the clash between old power and emerging truth vibrating with electric intensity. Allies once hidden stepped forward, noble elders, loyal knights, and common folk who dared dream of a new dawn. Their voices joined the prince's, weaving a chorus that challenged centuries of rigid tradition. Alara moved beside Alexander, her presence radiant, a living symbol of the love that dared defy the ancient script. Her hands sought his, fingers interlaced with quiet defiance and unyielding hope. The Duke's protest was a final, desperate strike, but it faltered before the swelling tide of conviction. The room's atmosphere shifted, light breaking through persistent shadows like the slow bloom of dawn after relentless night. As the declaration echoed through the vaulted hall, the golden crown, ancient tapestries, and shattered watch metaphorically reanimated, their symbolism merged with Alexander's declaration. Tradition and change, duty and love, fractured time and newfound hope twined together in a dance of profound transformation. Outside, the rose garden basked in the afternoon sun's warm embrace, petals swaying like gentle applause. In that moment, Alexander understood that the battle was not yet won, but the battlefield had changed. The prince and his beloved stood united, a luminous beacon slicing through the lingering mists of doubt, heralding a new era, fragile yet fierce. Their declaration was no mere statement. It was a revolution coded in devotion, a rebellion lifted on the wings of redemption. And beneath the sheen of regal gold and crimson velvet, where shadows still whispered, a subtle peace began to root itself, fragile and tenacious, a quiet victory writ large in the language of courage and love. The grand hall was illuminated like never before, as if the very stones had been kissed by the sun itself. Rich tapestries of deep crimson and burnished gold hung on the walls, their colors vibrant under a flood of golden light that poured from towering chandeliers. The air thrummed with an electric energy, a silent drumbeat heralding an inevitable reckoning. Prince Alexander stood at the center of the room, his regal yet understated attire a testament to the man he had become, elegant but unpretentious, adorned with the bearing of a leader reborn. His piercing blue eyes glinted with unwavering resolve, the storm of doubt now quelled beneath waves of clarity and purpose. The broken pocket watch, once a symbol of lost time and fractured hope, was now clasped in his hand. Its shards glowed faintly, as if healing had begun, mirroring the restoration within him. The golden crown rested on a velvet cushion nearby, glimmering softly. No longer a weighty emblem of rigid tradition or suffocating duty, It symbolized a new dawn, the unity of love, courage, and leadership. Before him, the assembled court waited, breath suspended. The Duke of Norland, now stripped of his veil of cordiality, stood exposed in the harsh light, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. But it was no longer fear that ruled the room. It was truth rising like the sun breaking through the darkest night. Alexander's voice resonated through the hall, steady and clear. For too long, this kingdom has been bound by chains forged from fear and pride. Duty is not a shackle, but a promise that we serve our people with honor, while honoring our hearts. A hush fell as he gestured toward Alara, who stepped forward with poise and grace befitting her true station. Alara, my companion, my love, and my equal, will stand beside me not in secrecy but openly. Together we embody a future where love is not hidden nor sacrificed. The crowd stirred, many faces softening with reluctant hope, others hardening with resistance. Yet the momentum had shifted irrevocably. The Duke spat venom. This union defies centuries of blood, law, and loyalty. Alexander met his gaze unflinchingly. It is loyalty not to outdated law, but to truth and justice. This court's trust is earned not by hollow titles, but by the courage to embrace change. As he spoke, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic hues that danced upon his face, and the crown alike, an exquisite mosaic of tradition and renewal united. Alara moved to his side, her hand finding his in silent solidarity. We do not seek to destroy the past, but to build upon it, to forge a kingdom where these walls are not prisons, but sanctuaries. Alexander raised the crown, its brilliance commanding attention, and with solemn grace placed it upon his own head, crowning not of old dominance, but of renewed responsibility married to heart's conviction. The fractured watch in his other hand, a relic of suffering and persistence, symbolized time reclaimed and futures rewritten. The assembled court, witnessing this transformation, felt the weight of their own inherited fears begin to crumble. Murmurs of allegiance rose like a rising tide, loyal nobles stepping forth, their voices echoing the new era's promise. In that radiant moment, Alexander stood fully reborn, no longer a prince torn between love and duty, but a sovereign embodying both, poised on the precipice of the story's final chapter. Outside, the rose garden bathed in golden light seemed to bloom anew, petals unfurling with the grace of a story rewritten. The broken rose, once a symbol of forbidden love and secrecy, now blossomed proudly, living testament to the triumph found in truth and unity. Calm yet fierce, Alexander's gaze swept the room one last time. The battle was near, but the war had shifted. The prince was no longer a man defined by exile. He was a king made whole by love's unrelenting power. With Alara at his side, he stepped forward, ready to face the final reckoning, not as a desperate claimant, but as a sovereign restored, a love vindicated, and a kingdom awakened. The morning sun filtered softly through the expansive windows of the restored royal chamber, bathing the room in a warm golden light. The velvet curtains, once drawn tightly against the world, swayed gently with a breeze that carried the scent of blooming roses from the garden beyond. Prince Alexander sat quietly by the window, his form relaxed but dignified, the regal fabric of his attire catching the light with subtle brilliance. His striking blue eyes, now clear and steady, traced the delicate dance of petals falling slowly from the rose bushes below. Each fluttering bloom seemed to whisper stories of the trials endured, the battles fought not with sword or steel, but with heart and resolve. The rose garden, once a secret refuge of forbidden love and whispered promises, now stood as a testament to endurance and hope. Alexander's fingers lightly brushed the surface of a finely crafted pocket watch, resting on the wooden Scylla memento, no longer broken, but lovingly restored. Its steady ticking echoed softly in the quiet room, a rhythmic pulse like the steady beat of his own heart, reminding him of time reclaimed and futures rewritten. The golden crown rested nearby, gleaming not as a symbol of burden, but of a leadership reimagined, one woven with compassion and courage, where love and duty walked hand in hand. The weight of the crown had become lighter, balanced by the strength born from vulnerability and truth. In the stillness, Alexander's thoughts wandered through the tapestry of his journey. He saw the moments of heartbreak, the public scorn at the banquet, the isolation of exile, Alara's secret truths unveiled, but it also glimpsed the fragile flickers of hope that had kindled in the darkest hours. Their love had been tested and tempered, emerging not diminished but fortified. A soft sound broke the reverie, the gentle footsteps of Alara approaching. She entered with quiet grace, her presence a soothing balm to the room's lingering shadows. Her eyes met his with a warmth that needed no words, a shared understanding of the path traversed together. She offered him a single crimson rose plucked fresh from the garden. Alexander accepted it with a subtle smile, lifting the bloom to his nose, inhaling its rich, sweet fragrance, a scent that spoke of renewal and promises reclaimed. Their hands met briefly, fingers entwining in an unspoken vow, a silent affirmation that the past, while etched deep, did not define the horizon that now stretched before them. With the rose cradled gently in his palm, Alexander rose, the weight of lingering doubts dissolving under the brightening light. He glanced once more toward the garden where new buds swelled with promise, their petals yet to unfurl, a living metaphor for the life he and Alara would nurture together. As they stepped toward the window, silhouettes framed by the warm glow, a serene calm settled over the chamber, a quiet peace that whispered of healing and hope, the gentle closing of one chapter and the tender unfolding of the next. Outside, the kingdom stirred to life beneath a sky streaked with soft hues of dawn. The distant laughter of children, the murmur of markets waking, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, all wove into an anthem of resilience and renewal. Alexander's gaze lifted to the horizon where sky met earth in an endless embrace. In that boundless space, he found not just the weight of a crown, but the lightness of purpose, soul steadied by love, leadership reborn through trials, and a heart open to the future's unfolding grace. The moment lingered like a breath held and released, a silent promise echoing through the vastness of the palace and the whispered rose garden beyond, a beginning made possible by endings understood and embraced. The delicate afternoon sun cast long, tender rays through the towering stained glass windows of the castle chapel, draping the stone floor in a kaleidoscope of crimson and gold. The air was thick with the scent of ancient wood and blooming roses from the garden beyond, each petal a silent tribute to trials overcome and love crystallized. In this sacred space, Prince Alexander and Alara stood hand in hand, an unspoken harmony radiating between them like the golden glow bathing their figures. Alexander's gaze swept slowly over the familiar symbols, the golden crown resting upon a silk cloth, the aged rosewood altar adorned with slow-burning candles, and the faded pocket watch nestled in his breast pocket, still bearing the faint cracks of its past, but now quietly ticking, testament to time reclaimed and resilience forged. The weight of the past months seemed to settle away like the soft dust dancing in a stray sunbeam, as a profound peace nestled within Alexander's chest. The tempests of exile, betrayal, and heartbreak now felt like distant waters he had navigated with faltering courage, arriving at a shore where love and duty no longer waged war but walked together. Alara's eyes mirrored the tranquil light, her voice a tender murmur that wove through the stillness. We carry the past not as chains but as lessons. Forgiving those who bound us frees us to build anew. Alexander nodded, his fingers gently tightening around her, the subtle affirmation of release and renewal. The crown we wear isn't merely inherited, it's shaped by the grace we show and the hearts we touch. I understand now that leadership means embracing vulnerability as strength. Outside, the rose garden breathed softly beneath a blue sky brushed with wisps of white clouds. Through the open chapel doors, a gentle breeze stirred delicate petals, scattering them in a slow, swirling dance. Each petal's journey symbolized rebirth and the quiet beauty of healing. A group of loyal subjects had gathered just beyond the chapel grounds, their faces alight with hope and newfound trust. They watched as Alexander and Alara stepped forward, together symbols of unity rising from the shadows of discord. Before speaking, Alexander's gaze rested briefly on the weathered stone, a subtle nod to the kingdom's enduring foundation, now fortified with the promise of change. Let forgiveness be the soil where we plant seeds of trust, he said softly, his voice steady but imbued with profound emotion. Only then can the roses bloom for all, untethered by fear. Ilara's smile blossomed into radiant certainty, and love, once secret and fragile, will become the light that guides our people forward. Together they approached the altar, side by side, no longer divided by the pains of the past, but united in purpose and heart. Around them, the chapel walls seemed to glow warmer, as if the very stones absorbed the essence of reconciliation and hope. The subtle chime of a distant bell drifted through the air, a resonant and peaceful cadence marking the closing of an old chapter and the gentle unveiling of a new beginning. As Alexander clasped Ilara's hand, the weight of former burdens lifted in a breath of forgiveness, theirs, and that extended to those who had once sought to tear them apart. The fractured watch, silent no longer, rhythmically pointed the moments of renewal. In the quiet aftermath, with sunlight weaving gold into their hair and casting shimmering patterns on the mosaic floor, the lovers shared a glance of serene understanding, an unspoken promise to tend the garden of their shared future with patience, love, and unwavering courage. Beyond the chapel, the first blossom of a new rose budded defiantly among the flourishing vines, a radiant symbol of reconciliation, hope, and the enduring power of love transcending even the most formidable traditions. The rose garden stretched out beneath a fading, amber sky where twilight wove threads of soft gold among the rustling leaves and shadowed blooms. The scent of roses, lush and potent, was a quiet reminder of secrets once hidden and love that had endured beyond whispers and walls. Here, where stories once trembled in silence, a new chapter was carefully being scribed in petals and earth. Prince Alexander knelt beside Ilara amidst the verdant embrace of the garden, his fingers lightly touching the cool soil as he prepared the delicate roots of a single rose blossom. The flower, crimson as the passions and trials that had carried them here, was a symbol reborn, its every petal a testament to resilience, hope, and a future chosen without sacrifice of heart. Ilara's hands joined his, their touch gentle but resolute, the quiet union unlike any royal decree, pure, unspoken, and infinitely powerful. Around them the garden seemed to breathe, petals shifting in a slow, reverent dance beneath the filter of twilight. The golden crown, once a weighty symbol of duty and expectation, rested nearby on a carved stone bench, no longer an emblem of constraint, but a quiet witness to transformation and healing. It caught the last flickers of fading sunlight, scattering them in a tender shimmer across distant leaves and softened faces. A faint breeze whispered through the garden's ancient boughs, stirring a cascade of crimson petals that floated gently to the earth. The broken pocket watch lay nestled near the roots, its glass no longer fractured, but whole, a silent nod to the time reclaimed, the moments remade, and the opportunity to choose love and identity beyond tradition's rigid grasp. Alexander's gaze lifted to the horizon where sky and earth kissed in serene harmony, a vast expanse awash in hues of rose and gold. Within that endless space he saw reflected the journey, the pain, the courage, the reclamation of self and love intertwined. The world around them was quiet but alive, the soft hum of life in every leaf, every petal, every distant call of birds settling in for night. A delicate peace enfolded Alexander and Ilara as they planted the rose together. Hands intertwined, eyes reflecting the depth of a shared promise. No words were needed. The silence held the weight of everything said and unsaid, the forgiveness earned, the battles fought, the love fiercely protected and now quietly flourishing. Beneath the canopy of stars beginning to pierce the velvet dusk, the garden glowed with an almost sacred light. The rose, newly rooted and nurtured, stood vibrant, a living poem to new beginnings in the enduring power of love's quiet revolution. Alexander and Ilara rose slowly, their forms silhouetted against the twilight, poised side by side on the threshold between past and future. They gazed out together over the peaceful kingdom, a realm no longer divided by fear and expectation, but united by hope and the strength to redefine tradition. Far below, the gentle ripple of a distant river caught the fading light, winding through the land like a silver thread, weaving every story into the fabric of time. As the night deepened, a final petal drifted from the rose, descending slowly in a silent ballet before settling upon the earth, tender emblem of love's persistence in the serene beginning of a new era. In that tranquil embrace of dusk and promise, Prince Alexander and Ilara stood still, hand in hand, living testament to a love that transcended crowns, whispered beneath the stars, and blossomed eternal in the heart of a kingdom reborn. What would you choose, love or duty? Share your thoughts below.